Good morning. Welcome to Sky News Breakfast. Thank you for joining us. The final stage of unlocking the country from COVID restrictions in June appears to be on course after it was revealed vaccines are largely effective against the new Indian variant of the virus. A study by Public Health England shows the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines are almost as effective against the variant as they are against the dominant Kent variant. It also shows 2 doses are far more effective, which could lead to the gap between injections closing to 8 weeks for everyone. The Health Secretary says he's increasingly confident about the timetable to lift COVID restrictions. Our political correspondent Rob Powell reports.
In the race between vaccines and variants, jabs just took a leap forward. New data shows the shots that have gone into millions of arms do work against the Indian COVID variant, leading to optimism of a return to something close to normality next month.
I'm increasingly confident that we're on track for the roadmap because this data shows that the vaccine after 2 doses works just as effectively, and we all know that the vaccine is our way out of this.
The Public Health England study shows 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine are 88% effective against symptomatic disease from the Indian variant. That compares to 93% for the Kent version, while the AstraZeneca jab is 60% effective against the Indian variant after 2 doses and 66% against the Kent variant. The vaccines are expected to be even more effective against hospitalisation and death. Government scientists say the lower AstraZeneca figures may be down to its rollout starting after Pfizer and the fact that the vaccine takes longer to achieve a full immune response. But while the effectiveness of both jabs after 2 doses is largely unchanged against the Indian variant, there is more of a difference after 1. A single dose of either Pfizer or AstraZeneca was found to be 50% effective against the Kent variant, dropping to just 33% against the Indian version. Because of this, ministers aren't ruling out bringing forward second doses to 8 weeks for everyone, not just those who are more vulnerable.
So I think there's a balance between getting the first doses into the younger people and making sure that we're maximising out the people who are partially protected, and then improving the vaccine-protected population and the older population who have the most severe disease, hospitalisations and deaths.
Cases of the Indian variant have spread rapidly in hotspots like Bolton and Blackburn, but across the country, the Kent variant is still dominant, responsible for a vast majority of hospitalisations in recent months. Whether that stays the case will depend on how contagious this new mutation is, a key factor that will dictate if the vaccine can keep up with the virus. Rob Powell, Sky News in Westminster.
And there'll be more on this when the Home Secretary Priti Patel speaks with Trevor Phillips on Sunday. That's at 8:30 this morning here on Sky News. Let's take a look now at the latest COVID figures for the UK. There have been 2,694 new cases. 6 more deaths have been reported, which means the total number of people who've died within 28 days of a positive test now stands at 127,716. Meanwhile, another 208,310 people have received their first vaccination and 411,714 people have received their second. In total, 59.79 million jabs have now been administered across the UK. The journalist at the centre of the controversy over the BBC's interview with Princess Diana says he's deeply sorry. Speaking publicly for the first time since the Dyson report was published, former Panorama reporter Martin Bashir said that he never wanted to harm Diana. The report concluded that he'd faked documents and then used them to secure the interview. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills reports.
It's the first time we've heard in detail from the man at the centre of this scandal. Speaking to the Sunday Times, Martin Bashir can't bring himself to admit he was wrong. I never wanted to harm Diana in any way, and I don't believe we did, he says. Everything we did in terms of the interview was as she wanted, from when she wanted to alert the palace to when it was broadcast to its contents. My family and I loved her. In many ways, his comments will only fuel the demand for answers from the BBC and others who were involved, like former Director General Lord Hall, whose investigations into Martin Bashir and the fake documents were described as woeful. After calls for him to step back from public life, he's resigned as chair of the National Gallery. Chris Blackhurst was one of the journalists that the BBC lied to after he asked if Bashir had told Diana she was being spied on.
There's no way that Lord Hall could have carried on as chairman, because I think I'm right in saying that the Prince of Wales is patron of the National Gallery, and that would really be compromising for him. And whatever he did as chairman of the gallery, every time he did anything or the gallery did anything, questions about Martin Bashir and the Princess of Wales would always be asked, so it was impossible.
But Hall's apology doesn't go far enough for those who believe this has raised serious questions about how the BBC is governed.
No one is bigger than the organisation, and they need to ensure that when they do actually put things forward, the editorial policy unit actually has a real say and real clout, so that it withholds the standards that you'd expect of our leading public service broadcaster.
Some who worked at the most senior levels within the corporation agree this is a time to look inward.
There was a systemic failure as well as an individual failure, and correcting that is important for the individual, for the staff involved in the BBC, but it's of course terribly important for the audience and the licence fee payer.
For Diana's brother, Lord Spencer, it's the Met Police he now wants to act. We understand he's again written to the force demanding they look further into the fake bank statements used by Bashir to deceive him. He also alleges Diana was a victim of blackmail and fraud. It has brought back painful memories for Diana's family. Prince William, representing the Queen as Lord High Commissioner of the Church of Scotland, unexpectedly spoke about the difficult days around Diana's death.
I was in Balmoral when I was told that my mother had died. Still in shock, I found sanctuary in the service at Crathy Kirk that very morning. And in the dark days of grief that followed, I found comfort and solace in the Scottish outdoors.
I'm told that Prince William is going to continue working with the BBC on certain projects, but he has made it very clear that he never wants that interview with his mother to be shown again. And in some way, he wants the BBC to try and correct that false narrative that he says it portrayed for so many years. The interview sparked a chain of events that rocked the monarchy. The Queen, again out on public duties, visiting HMS Queen Elizabeth, has, of course, in recent years, weathered other difficulties. This time, her family and her institution are not under attack, but through painful memories, are still feeling the repercussions. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News in...
Also this morning, the UK is to move to a fully digital border and immigration system after admitting that for decades it's been unable to record the number of people entering or leaving the country. The digital border will allow automated security checks and will measure immigrant numbers. An entire city is being evacuated in the Democratic Republic of Congo in Central Africa after a major volcanic eruption. People are being urged to leave the city of Goma after lava reached the outskirts. Aisha Zahid reports.
Smoke and molten ash lit up the night sky over the Democratic Republic of Congo after one of the world's most active and dangerous volcanoes erupted for the first time in nearly 20 years. Lava can be seen pouring towards the capital of Goma, consuming everything in its path. A government evacuation order was issued to the 2 million residents, and power supplies were cut off.
We have to do our best to give you factual information. Unfortunately, a part of Goma is in the dark. But I want to assure you, your government is doing something.
As panic sets in, locals grabbed what they could before leaving the city.
Here the situation is serious. The fire is becoming complicated. The houses are burnt, the people are suffering, the problems are huge.
Nyiragongo last erupted in 2002, when it killed 250 people and left 120,000 homeless. Clearing the city could help save lives, but nothing can stand in the way of the volcano's devastating power. Aisha Zahid, Sky News.
Now, there's concern that women seem to be disappearing from professional working life as they get older. A new book aims to highlight the issue of ageism and why it affects women in particular. One of the co-authors, Jane Evans, joins me now. Good morning to you. First of all, I suppose I better ask about your personal experience in the professional world.
Yes, for me, I've had a highly successful advertising career. I'm in my 50s. I tried to re-enter the business after a couple of years' break and found that I was completely invisible to my industry, which was a surprise because throughout my life, the one thing that I'd always been able to rely on was my talent. But I became invisible and faced ageism to my face.
And the book is invaluable to invisible. Was it something that you were aware of that you were experiencing? Could you identify and pinpoint exactly what was happening at the time?
The book is actually called Invisible to Invaluable. And so basically we're... Sorry about that. Written by me and Carol Russell. Basically, I found my experience and then actually started a movement to find out what was happening with other women. And when I decided to write about it, the last thing we thought the world needed was another book by a white middle-class feminist. So I'm working with Black author Carol Russell on the job because this is actually an epidemic that's hitting all women. The Centre for Better Aging made a report last August saying that when furlough ends, 1 in 10 men over 50 will be facing unemployment and 8 out of 10 women will be facing unemployment.
I mean, those are startling figures. And we know that the pandemic has particularly affected women in the professional arena in terms of, you know, the additional domestic duties, sometimes homeschooling. But for older women, it is a very specific issue, isn't it?
I think because women of our age have not appeared in the workforce before, there's a societal narrative that there isn't a place for us. So we find with professional women around about 45, it seems presumed that they're going to lose their job in the next round of redundancies, which is, you know, and again, women feel as though it's happening just to them. And then when they realise other women, it's actually happening to them. And you ask younger women to look around their workforce and no, they're not seeing women between the ages of 45 and 70. We all have to work till we're 70. We're going to live till we're 90. And yet we're expected to lose our careers halfway through our lives.
So what are the solutions? Does the book provide any solutions or suggestions for women who might face this?
First of all, for women to know that you are not alone. This is happening to all of us. And, you know, they say for millennials that the future of work is lifelong learning and multiple careers. We are saying to society, this is time to start now. So, for instance, we've started a thing with WPP and Brixton Finishing School, which trains midlife women in digital media, which there's a massive skills shortage of, and, you know, growth area. And so what we're saying is, let's start the lifelong learning and multiple careers. Let women start a second career. And for many ethnically diverse women, give them an opportunity to have a first career, a professional career.
You described something as a midlife power. And releasing that. Tell us a bit more about what that entails.
Well, especially when younger women are suffering through childcare and everything through the pandemic. You know, women of our age get a great boost from the other side of menopause. We have more testosterone, we have more confidence, we have more energy. So to throw away this powerhouse of force is ridiculous, especially when we can do what we did before and pave the way back for these women that have lost their jobs in the pandemic.
You founded the Uninvisibility Project.
That's correct. Yes, that was started basically through my experience. I wanted to know if there were actually any women over the age of 50 creating ads in London. And that's specifically important because women are the one, the creative director is the person who decides who we see in ads. When I started the project, I thought it was just going to be my arena. Within 2 weeks, it became apparent that this was an epidemic, and it was across all areas, and it was very much a societal narrative that we do need to change.
Jane Evans, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. You are seen, we see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coronavirus is surging through Nepal, one of the world's poorest nations. Hospitals are full, there's a shortage of oxygen and ventilators, and the country has run out of vaccines. Sky News was given access to one of the country's main hospitals to witness the crisis at first hand. A warning, you may find this report from Neville Lazarus distressing from the start.
The military has been drafted into picking up COVID-19 bodies that succumbed to the virus at home. It's their third one this morning, and they take no chances as they are called to the home of an 84-year-old woman. Her last rites are hurriedly performed by the family. There is little time for mourning and almost none for rituals in this deeply religious Hindu community. At one of the largest government hospitals, the conditions are telling. A makeshift centre outside, as everything inside the building is in short supply. Attached to oxygen, they wait their turn to get a look inside. Doctors and nurses doing their rounds and monitoring critical levels. Patients have come from across the country as public health facilities in rural Nepal is woefully inadequate. 74-year-old Hem Bahadur took a 6-hour grueling journey to find the hospital full. The family has decided to head back to the village.
अनि हाम्रो बिरामी भन्दा धेरै क्रिटिकल बिरामीहरु हुँदो रहेछ धेरै सिरियस बिरामीहरु हुँदो रहेछ त्यो भएर पनि हामी चाहिँ अब घरमै लगेर गर्दा पनि हुन्छ भनेर डाक्टरले फेरि सल्लाह दिनुभयो अनि त्यही हिसाबले डाक्टरको सल्लाह अनुसार औषधिहरु लिएर हामी घरै लिएका छौं.
Inside they are jostling for space. For some even the floor will do as long as it's inside. Sky News was given access to the hospital's ICU. A month ago, there were just 150 daily cases. Now the country reports 8,000. And the second wave has been lethal and relentless.
46, 49 यस्तो छ के अहिलेको त्यो ट्रेनमा त्यो भएर हामीलाई चाहिँ त्यो पेशेन्टसँग काम गर्दाखेरि एकछिन चाहिँ हामी आफै आँसु आउँदा जस्तो हुन्छ.
Each passing day, the death rate is mounting. A month ago, the daily average was 7 deaths. It's now almost 200 a day. Fear of infections, families are not allowed inside and grieve from outside the gates, watching and praying from afar. Aid agencies have warned the country is running out of vaccines. The government has appealed for emergency supplies as more than 1 million wait for their second shot. Less than 2% of the population are fully vaccinated. The pandemic is spreading across the valleys and mountains of Nepal. With more than 500,000 cases, this impoverished nation is now grappling to keep its people alive. Neville Lazarus, Sky News.
Now, in a curious experiment, scientists in London have given volunteers a robotic third thumb to use on their hands. While it looks useful, what does our brain make of it? Well, let's speak now to the designer of the third thumb, Danny Claude, and neuroscientist Paulina Kaliba. Good morning to you both. First of all, to you, Danny, in simple terms, explain to us the idea behind the third thumb and how it actually works.
Yeah, sure. So the third thumb is a 3D printed thumb extension for your hand, controlled by your toes. That's wirelessly connected to your big toes. And it's all 3D printed, all flexible, and it's a way to extend the use of the hand.
And what was the idea behind it? Is this for use for people who have all 5 fingers, or is it for those that might have lost a digit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it actually came about during my master's degree project at the Royal College of Art, and I actually designed prosthetic arms as well. So it was a way to kind of better understand a prosthetic as technology. I wanted to kind of understand the relationship that forms between kind of a person and a kind of augmentative technology or prosthetic technology, and decided to make an extra thumb. Yeah.
So, Paulina, 36 people were given this prosthetic and monitored before and after. What exactly did you find? What did you learn?
Right, so we saw that our participants who were using this first thumb for about 5 days had changes to how their natural hand is represented in the brain. And to be in the brain and to be a little bit more specific, what we observed is that their natural hand representation has shrunk, so to say, which means that to their brain, the way their individual fingers are represented became more similar. Each finger became a little bit more similar to the other ones.
And in terms of the other digits, did that minimise the use of them? What effect did that third thumb have on the hand?
So we cannot really say that it had a lot of effect in terms of how well you're able to use your hand sort of, mechanically. But we saw that when people were using the third thumb, they did start to use their fingers together a little bit differently. So instead of, for example, grasping everything with 5 fingers, they would form slightly different coordination patterns where they would use, for example, these 2 fingers a little bit more or these 2 fingers a little bit more. And we think that this is what sort of drove the changes we see in the brain, which is because people were invited to incorporate these extra digits into their hand, they started creating new hand movements, and that was reflected in how their brain represents or sees their natural hand.
Danny, were you surprised by the findings? Is this how you expected the experiment to pan out?
No, I mean, I could have never known that this project could have gone this far. It's amazing. And actually working with the people who trained with the thumb for 5 days and seeing their relationship with my design change into this kind of deep connection with this kind of extra thing that they wore all week. Yeah, it's been fascinating exploration into how the brain responds to augmentative technology.
And Paulina, the participants had an MRI scan before and after using the thumb. What specifically were you able to pick up from that?
Yeah, as I said before, what we did pick out is that their hand representation changed. And I think that's very interesting because that's not something trivial. I mean, we've known for a while that our brains are incredibly plastic. And we've known that the way our body is represented in the brain is related to how we use our body in daily life. But we have never expected that such changes could occur within such a short time span. I mean, our participants only used this thumb for 5 days. And just to give a little bit more context, our lab works very heavily with amputees. And we see that, even decades after amputation, the hand in the brain of all these people that lost their hands looks remarkably stable. And here, just 5 days of having an extra finger, and yet we see those changes in the brain. And I think that's very exciting. I think that's very interesting. And also, we can learn a lot from that in terms of how to design augmentative and prosthetic devices for the future.
And did you find that the changes that you established in the brain, were they long-standing? Did they last?
No, I mean, I cannot say that they were. We invited about 12 participants to come back for one more scan a week after they finished using the thumb. And we actually saw that most of these changes have diminished. So if anything, in our case, they were quite short-lived. But of course, we don't know if we prolonged the experiment, if they were wearing and using this thumb for, say, a month or 2 months, whether that would be the same. But here in this specific case, the changes were not long-term.
And Danny, obviously, we're seeing these technological advances due to people like yourself. But have you been satisfied to discover whether the brain can actually cope with these advances?
Yeah, satisfied, I'm not sure, but it's exciting. It's thrilling to see, that technology can kind of change the brain in that way.
And what do you envisage for your invention in the future? What sort of areas of use do you perhaps think it might be helpful for?
The exciting use cases at the moment is changing the hand into potential bimanual tasks. So people usually using two hands and can now kind of use the one hand, or perhaps even four.
Oh, wow. Danny, Claude and Paulina Kaliba, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning about the third thumb. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's catch up with the weather now. With Kirsty, could you do with a third thumb?
I could.
Operate your clicker.
I was just thinking for the weather, but also when I'm trying to do my daughter's hair, put in plaits, French plait. Maybe the thumb could help me do that. That would be genius. Yeah. I need all the help I can get. All right, let's take a look at the weather because it also needs all the help it can get. At the moment, we've got more wet and windy weather coming through today. But looking further ahead, hopefully things will settle down from the middle of next week.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. We have got some bright spells to enjoy this morning, but make the most of them because this wet and windy weather is moving in from the west, already affecting parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and quite strong and gusty winds coming in along with the rain. So expect a spell of a few hours of rain today. That band of rain will push its way from Ireland over the Irish Sea in towards parts of Western Britain as we head through the morning. Ahead of that, a few showers will develop across England and Wales. Maybe the odd heavy one. We have got some spells of sunshine hanging on across northern Scotland, the Northern Isles and eastern England, and some sunshine will come through later across Northern Ireland and Ireland as the rain clears, but could be some heavy and thundery showers here. Now that rain will continue to clear eastwards tonight, but lingers over northern Scotland. Tomorrow, a very wet and chilly day for northern Scotland, sunshine and showers elsewhere.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
The time is at 7:44. Still to come on Sky News Breakfast, a look at the newspapers with the broadcaster Anne Diamond and the editor of the Sunday Express, Michael Booker.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. I'm Greg Milam, Sky's US correspondent here in Los Angeles.
Our job is to tell the truth. This is a forgotten front line. They are dying here.
Here it comes. Boy, have we got some interesting ways of showing you what's going on.
Their message to us, get ready.
Talking like apocalypse.
Instructing you to stay at home.
I can't believe we did that.
It's pretty special, isn't it?
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us. We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people and putting them in for trucks.
You either live and recover, or you die.
OK, so that's like a war.
That's the war, yes.
We help you understand the world with us.
For the past 24 hours, the soldiers have been attacked on a number of occasions.
It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. They were convinced the United States would become hooked. Well, they were right.
We hear shotguns being fired and also tear gas is being put around.
The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world.
It's not out of control, but they've withdrawn. It's so hot.
My name's Ella. I'm an environmental activist and founder of the End Period Plastic campaign. You might be thinking, why period products? What's so bad about them? They're the 5th most common item found polluting Europe's beaches. They're more commonly found than straws or coffee cups.
Did you know that driving us to school creates extra toxic air at drop-off and pick-up times?
A band of heavy rain and gusty winds will slowly move eastwards across Ireland and the UK today. Much of Britain will start dry with sunny spells, but a scattering of showers will develop before a band of rain moves eastwards from Ireland and Northern Ireland. The rain will be heavy at times and accompanied by strong winds. It will feel cold with temperatures below average for the time of year. Once this band of wet and windy weather clears, it will be followed by bright spells and heavy showers in the west with a risk of hail. The showery weather will keep the oak pollen risk at low to occasionally moderate over the next few days. The main risk of pollen remains tree pollen with small amounts of grass pollen. Spores will increase temporarily after rain.
The Air Quality Report, sponsored by Philips Air Purifiers.
Back with us now to take us through the newspapers, the editor of the Sunday Express, Michael Booker, and the broadcaster, Anne Diamond. Welcome back to you both. Starting with you, first of all, Anne, and the Sunday Telegraph. And this story about the vaccination programme, the fact that the vaccines seemingly are effective against the Indian variant. So good news there.
Yeah, it is good news. And as Mick was saying about an hour ago, it was very depressing news last week when we were hearing more and more about the Indian variant. And I know friends of mine were turning to me and saying, oh, this is what the future is going to be like. There's going to be more and more complications. Just as you thought you were coming out of the woods, things, another complication is set up. And the Indian strain looked as though it might be a very real threat to us. However, now we hear from the scientists that our vaccines, our UK vaccines, are particularly effective against the Indian variant, almost as effective as they are against the Kent variant, which is very, very good. A double dose of the Pfizer vaccine gives you 88% protection, a double dose of the AstraZeneca 60+, which sound as though they're not quite there to 100%, but apparently that's almost as good as vaccines ever get, and particularly even more effective against the likelihood of being very, very seriously ill, having to be admitted into hospital or dying from COVID. So basically the news is very, very good, and we should celebrate that. And it's good to see good news on the front of the newspapers at last. It does make you feel better.
Yes, you can exhale somewhat. To the Times, Michael. Dominic Cummings back in the news. For why?
Yeah, well, next Wednesday he's if his eyesight's all right and he can find the room at Parliament, he's due up the Health and Sciences Select Committee to talk about various things about what's been going over the last year regarding the pandemic. Now it looks as though he's getting, according to this piece by Tim Shipman in the Sunday Times, he's getting all his armories together to have a right good go at various people who he perceives to have not listened to him and have done wrong, in particular Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, and Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary. Now, in this, it says he's like the sniper in the day of the jackal, and he's getting ready to shoot to kill. And there's a lot of tough macho political language in this about how he's this loner who's ready, lurking out there somewhere, ready to fire lots of salvos. But when you think about it, a lot of people lost a lot of trust in this man last year, and I think it's going to be difficult for those who want to believe him and want to damage the Prime Minister, so maybe people in the Labour Party who have already said that he hasn't got a reputation. So it is going to be very interesting to see what he comes out with. There's talk that he's got lots of WhatsApp messages from various people in power, documents possibly, although he could, it says in here that they're ready to look at the Official Secrets Act if he breaches anything to do with that. But it does look as though he has got a lot of scores to settle. Yesterday, while most of social media seemed to be enjoying Eurovision, he was tweeting about how Matt Hancock had backed this idea of we were trying to reach herd immunity. He also said that the 3 lockdowns could have been avoided if there had been any plan at all that was in place. Again, looking to blame particularly Matt Hancock. So it looks as though he's ready for a fight. But as it signs off in this piece, is he like one of the Japanese soldiers who was still fighting the Second World War a number of years afterwards, not realising it was over? So an analogy that he made about people who didn't like Brexit. So we'll wait and see, but it should be quite interesting on Wednesday.
Yes, eyes will certainly be on him on Wednesday. To the Express, Anne, and with all the recent stories and issues regarding the royal family, the Express is sort of looking at how the Queen has kept an even keel and going back to royal duties and doing what she always does.
That's right, and literally an even keel, because she visited the aircraft carrier HMS Elizabeth yesterday in Portsmouth, and a magnificent spectacle it was too, because I'm on a cruise ship right now, and we went past that, and it looks fantastic, and all of the aircraft were and the helicopters were all parked out on the top deck. It's an enormous ship, and she went to visit everybody. One of the little highlights in the story there is that amongst the crew was a chief petty officer who was aged 40, and his son, who was also serving on the ship. And that's quite an unusual thing, which the Queen noted herself, to see a father and son serving alongside each other on the new aircraft carrier. But I don't know whether I'm just getting a bit old and soft, but it is so comforting somehow and stabilising, as you said, to see so many pictures on the front papers of the Queen looking regal, so resplendent in bright red, out doing her duty yesterday, despite all of the things that have happened and some of the bad news that has surrounded the royal family just recently, and of course us all suffering the year of COVID and everything. To see her out and about doing her thing, which she does so well. I don't know, there's something uniquely comforting about that, and many of the papers are playing on that. Yes, there she was yesterday. I mean, honestly, I can't tell you what an impressive ship that looked like, even in the rather dark and murky Portsmouth harbour yesterday. It's still a bit windy and blowy outside, but she looked magnificent in that bright red.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think, everyone, whether you're a royalist or not, it's just quite nice to see her smiling on the front of the Sunday Express. Yeah, it's nice to see her smiling. Let's just finish up with you, Michael. Russian spies.
Yeah, well, Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, is on the front of the Telegraph saying that they're our biggest enemy at the moment, the Russians, but they seem to be playing around a little bit, and they've been sending messages, apparently, to MI6. They've been sending word puzzles, like crosswords, and little puzzles in an envelope. It was addressed to MI6, to friends of Russia in the UK, and in it there was a little puzzle which had just, apparently the answer was a yes or no at the end of it. And so what the Henry Jackson Society, the think tank, think is this is just a sort of reminder that they're out there, they're busy, they're looking around, and they're having a bit of a snoop around, but they're having a bit of fun as well with it as well. So it's a slightly spooky, but the spies are out there, but they're out for a laugh, and they're like a little bit of a crossword as well. But we'd like a crossword or two with the Russians too.
Intriguing, isn't it? Just a kind of heads up. We're still here. Michael and thank you very much for taking us through the papers this morning. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Still to come on Sky News Breakfast. An official study says both the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines are effective.